Hey everybody, thank you so much for clicking on this video. We are gonna get cozy, sitting on the floor. I left my coffee over there. We need a fun beverage because we are gonna sit and chat about the 5 most common fitness myths that I see perpetuated online today. I actually asked you all for help with this on Instagram, just what myths you wanna see dispelled, and I picked the top 5 that were most commonly requested, as well as the ones that I typically see online today. Now, there were so many great suggestions that I just can't get to all of them, but I do wanna answer all of them in one way or another, so definitely keep your eyes peeled either here for a full-length video or on Instagram in short-form content. That being said, I need to get my coffee, you need to get a fun beverage, and we're gonna sit here and we're gonna chat about some fitness myths and dispel them. Cheers! I brought a textbook. I would say the number one myth that I see in the fitness community that is still perpetuated today is this idea of a fat burning workout, the fat burn zone, anything with fat burn, period. I've actually dispelled this in 2 videos already, and I have used the same example both times because it rings true. And it is from this old, crusty, dusty-ass NASM textbook. I have posted it because I've referenced this so many times. I know this is exactly what this is. We're gonna chat through this example. I'm honestly not excited to talk about this again because the editing process of getting all of this information on the screen is so annoying. Part of me literally just wants to copy and paste it from an old video, which I might do. We're gonna find out in 3, 2, 1. So an RQ of 0.8 results in 67% of energy coming from fats and 33% of energy coming from carbohydrates. Further, at this pace, the individual expends 4.8 calories per minute, 3.2 of which, 67%, comes from fat, and 1.6, or 33%, comes from carbohydrates. Thus, for the full 20 minutes, the individual expends 64 calories from the metabolism of fat and only 32 calories from the metabolism of carbohydrates. So that's person number 1, and again, we're showing how many calories we're burning from fat versus carbohydrates. Individual number 2, let's say you doubled the intensity to 6 miles per hour for the same 20 minutes. The added intensity would require more carbohydrate as fuel and the subsequent RQ of a 0.86. That results in 54% of energy coming from carbohydrates and only 46% of energy from fat. However, this pace resulted in 9.75 calories expended per minute, or 5.2 and 4.48 calories per minute from carbohydrates and fats respectively. Thus, for the full 20 minutes, the individual expended 104 calories from carbohydrates and 90 calories from fat. This increase in intensity raised the total caloric expenditure from fats for the same time invested above that of the low-intensity walk to the tune of about 50% increase. Thus, the marketing statement that decreasing intensity puts one into a fat-burning zone is not entirely accurate. So let's break that down really quickly. There's 2 things here. Not only did the increase in intensity increase how many more calories you were burning from fat, but it also increased the total calories expended. And that's what's more important in a fat loss goal. It does not matter where you're burning your calories from or where you're using your energy from. It comes down to being in that negative energy balance. All that matters if you have a fat loss goal is, are you expending more energy than you're taking in? Yes, I realize it's more complex than that in terms of implementation, but on the metabolic level, it is that simple. Fat burning zone, debunked. Ooh, I should put like a fun editing thing there. Debunked. And then like the Law and Order, like bum bum. I might get a copyright claim for that. Okay. The next myth that was wildly requested was knees over toes, meaning can your knees go over your toes safely? So this claim that like you should never bring your knees past your toes truly doesn't make sense. And the best way that I can show you this is by using the stairs. When you use the stairs, your knees go over your toes. So like, why wouldn't you train that range of motion if we use it every single day? You have to remember that a range of motion is only dangerous if your body is not ready for it. Now, if you have restrictions through the knee or the ankle, there are definitely some mobility drills that you can implement to help create and strengthen that space. For the knee, I would definitely recommend a knee flexion pales rails. So to get into this guy, you're gonna head over to a wall and you're gonna tuck your toes, bringing them up against the wall, getting to as much knee flexion as you can control. Control means that we're not arching the low back and we're not taking an excessive forward lean. First thing you're gonna do is hold a passive stretch for 2 minutes here so that your nervous system feels safe and okay with the amount of quad stretch and hip flexor stretch. And then you're gonna take a 15 to 30 second contraction where you're pushing your foot into the wall. So you're trying to straighten out your leg. In this position, you're going to feel a lot of quad engagement. Then your second contraction, you're going to try and pull your foot off the wall, getting your heel to your butt, and you're going to feel a ton of hamstring right here. Essentially, all we're trying to do is not only increase our range of motion through knee flexion, but then strengthen those end ranges as we try and get out and into the movement deeper. Then moving down to the ankle. So if you have trouble with ankle dorsiflexion or bringing the knee over the toe, you can do the same thing with an ankle dorsiflexion drill. You're going to hold the stretch for about 2 minutes to relax the nervous system, and then the first contraction you're going to take is trying to push your foot through the floor. So you're basically trying to go into plantar flexion or straighten out, point the foot. Second contraction, you're going to try and pull your toes off the floor, increasing that ankle dorsiflexion or decreasing the angle between the foot and the shin. Finally, once you have enough space, a great drill for knees over toes is actually step ups. What you're going to do here is shift your knee as far forward as you can to really work on just the front leg, and then you're going to stand up. Super simple. So that would be my plan of action if bringing the knees over the toes does not feel safe to you, but training that range of motion inherently does not, it doesn't cause injury. That's a silly thing to say. Debunked. Next. All right, the next myth that I see all the time is that strength training makes you bulky. First of all, bulky is subjective. To some people, I'm bulky. To some people, I'm athletic. To some people, I'm skinny. None of these things are measurable outside of your own personal bias and worldview. That being said, especially for women, getting bulky is primarily coming down to nutritional choices. We simply don't produce enough testosterone or androgen hormones in general to get that big simply from lifting weights. Now, obviously, there are differences in women across the board with these androgen hormone concentrations, but we're going to look at more of the standard here. And if we really zoom out and understand what having more muscle mass on the body actually does on the metabolic level, you would realize that this makes no sense. So muscle is denser than fat, meaning that 1 pound of muscle is actually going to be much smaller on the body than 1 pound of fat. So first of all, if you're strength training and adding muscle mass to your body, it's going to take up less space than fat mass. And adding that muscle mass requires more energy at rest just to maintain. So having that additional muscle is going to naturally raise your BMR, aka how much energy your body needs at rest. Like if you woke up and just laid in bed all day, that's how much energy your body needs at rest. Part of that energy that's needed is just maintaining your muscle mass. So if your nutrition is staying exactly the same, but you're adding in strength training and you are increasing your muscle mass, you're increasing your BMR, and you're going to need to use some of that stored energy to support your muscle mass that you've built. Now, if you're strength training and you're eating more than your body needs to maintain, that's when we typically see people getting bulky. Because in that scenario, you're probably not only adding muscle mass, but also adding fat mass. So really simply, getting bulky is not a training issue. It's a nutrition issue. Debunked. All right, next one, let's talk about cardio killing your gains. We're gonna look at this one super logically again, because I would love to hear someone try and explain this without using anecdotal evidence. I would love to hear it. Please, try. Because unless you are overdoing it on the cardio so much and under eating that your body has no choice but to then sustain itself by eating away at your muscle mass, there is literally nothing at the metabolic level that would result in cardiovascular activity just automatically canceling out any type of lifting you're doing. Now, I recently made an entire video breaking down the different adaptations that occur with strength training versus cardiovascular training. And specifically, it was more anaerobic versus aerobic training, but you can watch the video and see the differences there. But really quickly, just to pull a few things for the sake of proving this point, if we're thinking gains, right? Like this myth is that cardio kills your gains. Gains would be visible muscle mass, aka hypertrophy, which is typically an anaerobic form of training. And an adaptation from anaerobic training is typically increased muscle mass on the muscular system. Now, on the cardiovascular side, we do get a muscular adaptation from cardiovascular training. And the main adaptation you're going to see here is actually improved oxygen efficiency in your slow twitch muscle fibers. The reason for this, especially if you're doing like lower zone work, is because that's going to increase your capillary and mitochondrial mitochondrial density. Basically, in layman's terms, your muscles are going to get more efficient at moving for a longer period of time. And again, we're just talking about gains here. So we're just talking about the muscular system. There is nothing about cardiovascular training or aerobic training in appropriate amounts that points to a decrease in muscle mass that leads to undoing all of your strength work. This is just another piece of misinformation that pits cardio and strength training against each other when really we need to zoom out and look at the big picture. And to be honest, it's probably being perpetuated as a myth to just sell you something that you do not need. So say it with me, debunked. Final one, we are talking about cortisol and the myth that cortisol makes you fat. I do feel like we're almost out of the cortisol is banned trend, like we're on the tail end of it. But let's quickly break down what cortisol even is, and then we'll explain why it's BS. So cortisol is a catabolic hormone, which means that it is going to break things down, different from an anabolic hormone, which builds things up. Okay. Specifically, cortisol is going to promote muscle protein breakdown. It's going to increase your fat oxidation, and it typically suppresses your immune cell function. That being said, acute, meaning short spikes in cortisol, are actually needed for a lot of metabolic processes within the body, including strength adaptations. As long as your body is functioning normally, cortisol spikes are completely normal. It's very similar to insulin spikes. Do you remember a few years ago when everyone and their mother was wearing a glucose monitor because spikes in your blood sugar were terrible? Unless you are diabetic or have insulin resistance of some type, you don't need to worry about that. When you have a blood sugar spike, your body, if it's functioning normally, is going to release insulin into the bloodstream. That insulin is going to take the glucose out of the bloodstream and it is going to store it as glycogen for later. Blood sugar spikes are normal. Cortisol spikes are normal, unless your body does not react appropriately to it. And if that is the case, I would encourage you to go see a medical professional, not listen to an influencer online. Because most of the bullshit you see around cortisol online is like,
I stopped strength training because it was spiking my cortisol and now I just do Pilates and I'm so much thinner and better.
That message is so incredibly irresponsible, especially toward women, because women are so much more likely to develop some form of osteopenia or osteoporosis, a bone density deficiency as we age. Number one, women are, again, typically just smaller than men. Smaller bodies means smaller bones, so you have less bone density. But number two, most women go through menopause, and as your body stops producing those hormones that help contribute to maintaining our bone density, like estrogen, unless you're doing something about it, your bone density is going to drastically plummet, which means that if you fall and you break a hip, you have lost your independence. So the next time you hear some thin woman in a Pilates class trashing strength training because of cortisol, just know that it's absolute horseshit. Last one, debunked. All right, that's it. That's the video. If there's another myth that I did not get around to and you think that it would make a great video, let me know down below. Make sure.
You did it.
Oh.
You did it. Don't put this in the video.
I'm going to put it in the video. Can I put it in the video? I'm going to put it in. Nope. Anyway, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out, and I will see you all in the next one.